blueprint for city life in 2050. Unless technology can turn things around. Overcrowded, polluted, and an environmental mess. This is Ecopolis. In this groundbreaking 6-part series, Nobel Prize-winning scientist Dan Kammen reveals the technology that could transform our cities and usher in a brighter future. This episode, Transport.
If our path of more and more transport and more personal vehicles continues, we will be in a world where we poisoned ourselves just with our cars, trucks, planes alone.
Using Ecopolis as a testbed, Kammen investigates new cutting-edge technologies.
I have to be sure the technology will deliver by 2050. They have to be cost-effective and user-friendly.
He hopes to discover the technologies that can revolutionize our future and save all the world's cities from possible disaster. Ecopolis, population 18 million. 3/4 of us could live in places like this by 2050. But experts warn that citizens of future megacities may create 5 times more carbon dioxide and rapidly speed global warming. It's potentially a massive problem. But science holds the key to preventing it. By 2050, 4.5 million vehicles will crowd the streets of Ecopolis, and air travel could be 7 times more popular. We could be on the highway to hell.
There's almost 1 billion vehicles on the planet. They're growing all the time, and all of them demand oil.
Dan Kammen is a lead scientist on the team that won the Nobel Prize for pioneering work on climate change. Now he plans to transform future cities with technology. This episode, Kammen investigates futuristic transport technologies from 4 visionary scientists. Scientific think tank, the Center for Alternative Technology, will calculate how each innovation impacts the megacity's carbon footprint. Then Kammen will choose the single technology with the best chance to save Ecopolis.
The scientific verdict is very clear. We're in a moment now where we must act. We need to start deploying clean technologies today to avoid climate change, and we need to find ways to adapt to what's coming.
The biggest problem with transport is our all-consuming addiction to oil. Not only does it produce pollution, but it's running out fast. We must find new technology before our oil wells run dry.
We use 80 million barrels of oil a day. By mid-century, we expect that supply to be perilously small. If we don't find a substitute for oil, our vehicles will have nothing to power them.
The first technology under the microscope could keep all our engines running. This man is building a business that manufactures a miracle. A new, everlasting oil supply that could reproduce itself 6 times a day. His workers are some of the tiniest creatures on Earth, and he found them in a bucket of pond scum. Ecopolis, typical megacity of the year 2050. The streets searing in the heat of runaway global warming. One of the top culprits, transport, and the deadly fumes of 4.5 million engines. Nobel Prize-winning scientist Dan Kammen plans to change the future with technology. This is Texas, where they call oil black gold. But a new oil boom is on its way. Biologist Glenn Kurtz has seen the future, and it's green.
We shouldn't be drilling for oil, we should be growing it.
This is the world of biofuels, growing fuel from plants. Photosynthesis is the living force that plants use to turn sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide into food. Some plants store this food in the form of vegetable oil, which can be converted to biofuels to run combustion engines. The big advantage of using biofuel is that all the CO2 it produces has already been swallowed up by photosynthesis in the growing plants. But some environmentalists say biofuel is an ecological disaster. Biofuel crops like corn and soya, muscle in on fertile land once used for food. Vast forests, from Indonesia to Brazil, have been cleared to make way. The outcome? Rocketing food prices and possible land shortages. There isn't enough space on the planet to feed the fuel habits of future megacities.
If we're going to use conventional crops for an energy source, things like corn, soy, palm oil, here in the States we would have to use over 100% of the available land mass to grow that crop. In simple terms, it's just not possible or practical. So we have to come up with a better idea and a better way of doing it.
For 15 years, Kurtz has struggled to create a new kind of biofuel. And the source is on his own front porch. Algae. These simple organisms will grow on any stretch of water in just a fraction of the space of other biodiesel crops. But Kurtz faced an enormous challenge to find an algae that would produce enough oil for his plant. And there are more than 1 million algae species on Earth. These days, Texas oilmen wear white coats. They comb an alien world for that one special algae packed with oily chemicals called lipids.
So what you're seeing here is a rather pedestrian algae. It floats around in your ponds, in your backyard. It lands in your swimming pool all over the place. And the truth of the matter is it's not of much interest to us because it doesn't really carry a lot of lipids.
Kurtz and his team spent thousands of man-hours in their quest for the perfect oil-rich algae. And now they think they've found one that could work. We call it pond scum. Kurtz calls it Colonius amphisbaena. Up to 60% of its body weight could be pure oil.
2 huge lipid bodies buried in this organism. That's what we're after. That's the oil that we want to mine or drill out now. So all we have to figure out is how to drill this little sucker out and get the oil out.
Kurtz is building a refinery to fuel the megacities of tomorrow. It's called a bioreactor, a machine for multiplying algae. For maximum sunshine, Kurtz hangs his algae vertically in sealed bags of water. That means he can grow an entire algae farm on a tiny patch of land. But Kurtz knows that algae usually store energy in the form of carbohydrates, not oil. It's only when times are tough that the algae turn their carbs to oil, like a bear putting on fat for the winter.
It goes through the summer, it goes through the normal processes of gathering food and eating it, taking it into its body, but then it knows when the seasons start to change that that food supply is going to get shortened and shorter.
At the crucial moment in the cycle, Kurtz starves the algae of sunlight to trick it into storing oil. It's hard to believe that oil-rich pond scum could fuel every vehicle in Ecopolis. But Glenn Kurtz has done the math. It could fuel every vehicle on the planet, even with the huge demands of the year 2050.
So we started early this morning with 1 ton of algae. Tomorrow we'll have 2. The day after that we'll have 4. After that we'll have 8. Shortly after that, 16. The number just goes on and on and on. Every day it doubles.
Algae's runaway reproduction makes it the only crop that could ever produce enough biofuel for our needs. This is an oil supply that never runs dry. But Colonius amphisbaena still gives Kurtz one last headache.
Getting the algae out of the water and then getting the oil out of the algae is still one of the challenges that we face.
One technique uses liquefied carbon dioxide under high pressure. The liquefied gas dissolves the algae's cell walls and sweeps up the oil. Reducing the pressure turns the carbon dioxide back into a gas, leaving pure oil behind. Right now, the high pressure step makes the process too expensive for mass production. But Kurtz is confident technology will soon find a solution.
Traditional crop oil, algae oil, virtually indistinguishable. The difference? Less land, less water, faster production. This is the future.
The U.S. has vast tracts of land that can support traditional crops. Space for tomorrow's megacities to grow their autofuel.
Rather than having to plant over 100% of the available land mass of the U.S., we could plant as little as 10% of one state such as New Mexico to supply all of our energy needs in the future.
Our planet's most arid land could one day house millions of algae bioreactors. The alternative is a world without oil. Glenn Kurtz can see only one way to go.
Looking down the future, if we look 2050, we're either going to be driving with algae in the tank or we're going to be walking. Take your pick.
Energy scientist Dan Kamen must decide if algae biofuel is the best fix for the future of transport.
It doesn't compete with nature. It doesn't compete with agriculture. It's not one that's going to make our problem of land use worse. That's a big plus.
The really amazing news is still to come. If all transport in Decapolis switched from fossil fuel to algae biofuel, it would cut vehicle emissions by almost 100%. But here comes the downside.
Urban areas are also the places where we're seeing the fastest rates of increase in asthma and lung diseases, and those are caused by the other compounds you inevitably get when you burn fuel. Even a green biofuel produces the compounds that give us acid rain and smog.
Burning biofuels still creates some harmful pollutants, like nitrous oxide. So algae biofuel could lose out in Kamen's final judgment. Climate scientists say that if we don't find a technology to tackle vehicle emissions, the citizens of future cities will be choking on smog, and we all risk runaway global warming. One possible solution, a futuristic technology that could send Henry Ford's greatest idea to the junkyard. This man's car looks like a regular car, and it drives like a regular car, but it doesn't burn fuel in the engine because it doesn't have an engine. It has a secret powerhouse that came from outer space, the hydrogen fuel cell.
It's actually a direct replacement for the internal combustion engine that we have in production today.
Daniel O'Connell of General Motors thinks tomorrow's cars will be powered by a clean, green chemical reaction. GM's prototype Chevrolet Equinox runs on electricity created from hydrogen. Instead of an engine, the car has 3 hydrogen fuel tanks, an electric motor, and a stack of 400 fuel cells. Here's how a fuel cell works. Its vital element is the precious metal platinum, a catalyst that speeds up the chemical reaction. Hydrogen from the tanks hits the platinum and reacts with oxygen from the air. One product is H2O, or water, the car's harmless byproduct. The other is electricity, up to 93 kilowatts of power to drive the motor and turn the wheels. It's taken close to 40 years to bring this technology down to Earth. July 16th, 1969. NASA's Apollo 11 mission blasts off to pursue the unthinkable, putting the first man on the moon. One major technical challenge, producing enough electrical power to run the astronauts' life support systems. Conventional batteries restricted early missions to 4 days. In Apollo 11, all onboard power is supplied by 3 fuel cell units. The mission makes history, and the fuel cells keep the astronauts alive for their 8-day, million-mile round trip. Fuel cell technology earns its place in the future of space travel. A fuel cell under the hood of every vehicle seemed the next logical leap for mankind. But there is a snag. NASA's fuel cell units weighed in at 250 pounds each and cost millions of dollars. GM's first attempt to crack the problems was its 1966 fuel cell van. But the fuel cell stack was so big that it turned a 6-seater into a 2-seater. And the vital platinum catalyst alone cost as much as a whole fleet of vans. Fast forward to the mid-90s. Fuel cells still need more than 20 ounces of platinum at an eye-watering $400 an ounce.
We kind of put that on hold for a while as the technology developed. Really the last 10 or 15 years we've really gone seriously at fuel cells.
Now, 4 decades after the Apollo program, O'Connell's research team has finally found a way to slash the platinum content. The core of the Equinox fuel cell is coated with platinum layers thinner than a human hair.
That's the big trick, and that will get you down the cost curve so that you don't have as much precious metal in your fuel cell stack.
The latest design needs less than 2 ounces of platinum, and the stack is small enough to fit comfortably in a regular car. The Equinox prototype has cost millions of dollars to develop, but could be affordable for consumers within a decade. And all the other major car companies are also developing hydrogen cars. Typical families are already road testing the technology that could transform future cities.
It's where the rubber meets the road. It's just really inspirational to know that we're one step closer to production.
But all the manufacturers developing fuel cell cars face a major selling job: persuading drivers to share their car with a tank full of hydrogen. In May 1937, the giant hydrogen-filled Hindenburg burst into flames over New Jersey with the loss of 36 lives. Latest research blames the Zeppelin's flammable outer skin, not just the gas used to inflate it. Even so, there was concern that a high-speed collision could make cars' hydrogen tanks rupture and explode. Engineers put the Equinox through the same rigorous crash tests as conventional models and got no nasty surprises. O'Connell is confident hydrogen is just as safe as gasoline.
The vehicle is very safe. I'm very comfortable putting my 9-year-old daughter right on the back seat, taking her out for a drive.
But the biggest problem of all remains. We have more than enough hydrogen to meet our needs in the water that covers 70% of our planet. But the process to extract hydrogen from water uses electricity generated by dirty old fossil fuels. O'Connell is convinced that renewable electricity sources like solar power will soon make green hydrogen a reality.
That gets us the ultimate answer of no petroleum use, zero emissions, and very, very efficient from start to finish.
Flash forward to 2050, a world where gasoline could be a thing of the past. Hydrogen balloons pumping gas on every corner. Hydrogen production at the mall. And a fuel cell car in every driveway. The beauty of the fuel cell car is that it could even produce surplus power. You could plug it in at night to charge up your home.
At a job site, you could power tools. At home, you could power your lights and heat. At your workplace, you could power everything there as well.
It's the chance of a brighter future for Ecopolis in the year 2050. A city free of deadly pollution, lit by the power of the automobile.
It's a great future with clean energy, and hydrogen is the answer.
Nobel Prize-winning scientist Dan Cannon must decide whether fuel cell technology is the anti-carbon weapon of the future. The carbon count shows that if every vehicle in Ecopolis makes the switch to a fuel cell, transport emissions will take a tumble by an impressive 80%.
This one has all the signs of a home run. With a fuel cell, there's no combustion. There's no CO2 produced. In fact, a fuel cell vehicle produces warm water and that's it. It totally changes the environmental impact of operating the car.
Cameron likes the fuel cell. He's not so sure about the fuel. The car only makes sense if Ecopolis has a renewable source of hydrogen.
We're not there right now. We might not be there for years to even decades.
So the jury is still out on whether our cars can ever be truly green. But there are alternatives. Cameron still has 2 more technologies to explore. And the first is a vehicle that packs in the people and makes cash from trash. The choking nightmare of Ecopolis in 2050. And public enemy number 1 is the car. By 2050, the number of cars on the road will more than double. That will mean an incredible 4.5 million vehicles on the streets of Ecopolis. A filthy, traffic-snarled hell. For Nobel-winning climate scientist Dan Cannon, there's one obvious solution.
If we can make mass transit the main way we get around, cities of the future can be very different and much cleaner than today.
Getting people out of individual vehicles and into mass transit dramatically cuts fuel use and emissions. But any vehicle with a combustion engine still belches deadly fumes. So this woman has an idea that could transform the streets of Ecopolis. Born out of an old army truck and a mountain of festering trash.
I think it's a very exciting, innovative idea to combine two major industries, transport and waste management.
Manila, capital of the Philippines. This fast-expanding megacity is home to over 14 million people and 1.4 million cars. Air quality is 3 times worse than the safety standard. Greenpeace climate campaigner Athena Ballesteros believes the city is at a crisis point.
Manila is actually ranked as one of the top 10 worst, most polluted cities in the whole world. 1 out of 10 Filipino children are suffering from asthma or other respiratory diseases.
Manila's traffic fumes kill an astonishing 4,000 residents every year. But Ballesteros sees salvation for Manila and future megacities in a Filipino national icon, the jeepney.
The jeepney is one of the most flamboyant, one of the most iconic public transportation vehicles, not just in the Philippines, but in the whole of Asia.
Jeepneys date back to the end of World War II, when the war-ravaged Philippines was desperate for motor vehicles. The locals snapped up surplus U.S. Army Jeeps and turned them into buses. Today, an incredible 300,000 jeepneys ply their trade on Manila's heaving streets. The good news? Fewer people in cars. The bad news? The diesel-powered jeepney isn't exactly emissions-free. So Ballesteros decided to reinvent it.
It's the most inefficient and the most polluting of all public transportation.
Her eureka moment? Trade diesel for electric power. Ballesteros took the idea to Robert Puckett, head of Solarco, the solar electric company. Like her, he loves the jeepney, hates the fumes.
When they came over and suggested the electric vehicle, I jumped into it right away and I said yes.
But Puckett's task wasn't easy. Pound for pound, electric motors can't match a diesel engine for horsepower. He had to devise a vehicle that shed the jeepney's heavyweight military steel without ditching its personality. It took 4 years' hard work before Puckett was ready to unveil his new baby, the electric jeepney, remodeled in fiberglass, weighing in at a slimline 900 pounds. In place of its 3-liter diesel engine, a tiny 5-horsepower electric motor. But Puckett knows it'll take some selling to the old-school jeepney boys. So he pits his electric jeepney in a nail-biting head-to-head against a World War II-style gas guzzler. It's neck and neck. Until, that is, they hit Manila's notorious rush hour. In the slow, slow, stop, stop, slow, the electric jeepney is a clean winner.
The jeepney up front is, you know, idling, emitting smoke, pollution. Here we are, just quiet, there's no idling, no noise, pollution, and no fumes.
The e-jeepney does everything the old one does, apart from filling your lungs with diesel fumes. But there's still a problem. Electric jeepneys need electricity. And most electricity still comes from burning fossil fuels. To make the jeepney a truly future-friendly green machine, Athena Ballesteros knows she must rethink its power source.
Instead of getting your power from coal or oil or gas, you use biodegradable waste.
Her brilliant idea? Fight one pollution problem with another. Trash. Mountains of it. 6,000 tons every day. On this Manila dump site, at least 50,000 people risk their lives, scavenging for anything useful they can sell. But renewables expert Wes Stewart thinks the trash hides a much bigger source of wealth.
You know, most people who come to a place like this dump site just see trash, mounds and mounds of it. But there are thousands and thousands of tons of organic waste product that come here into this dump site every day. Out of that organic can come a tremendous value.
This daily tidal wave of waste from Manila's markets, households, and restaurants could be an amazingly rich source of energy. Here's why. Deep down in a trash heap, hardly any oxygen can get through. In these conditions, tiny natural bacteria digest the organic waste, creating methane. If it gets into the atmosphere, it's a harmful greenhouse gas. But processing the waste in sealed chambers means the methane can be captured. The result is free biogas that can be burned in a generator just like natural gas.
Biogas is sort of nature's original way of cleaning up the planet. All we do is accelerate what nature does for itself. It cleans up our mess.
It means a totally renewable electricity supply for the jeepney and a solution to the methane-spewing waste mountains of future megacities. Manila's entire jeepney fleet may one day be fueled by biogas-generated electricity. But right now, the e-jeepney is already winning fans around the city.
It's so amazing that I didn't even hear it coming. And plus, when you're riding in it, you could actually chat with your friends because it's so quiet.
Hey, it's my stop.
Athena Ballesteros thinks that for all megacities, this is the ticket to the future.
My dream is to see the electric jeepneys dominate the streets of Manila and of the cities of the Philippines and all the cities of the world.
The green machine that came out of the smog. Can the jeepney set Ecopolis free from gridlock? Climate expert Dan Cannon must decide.
E-jeepneys are a very exciting opportunity. What you've got here is a way to get people out of their individual cars and to power those vehicles cleanly.
But Cannon needs hard facts to make his decision. The carbon count is a surprise. Using biogas to power existing mass transit vehicles would save just 4% in transport emissions. Why so low? Because hardly any of us take the bus or train.
Right now, people are addicted to their private automobiles, and public transport in many places is slow, sometimes expensive, and doesn't always get you there on time.
But if we all switch to mass transit vehicles run on the jeepney's biogas technology, it's a whole different picture.
The flexible platform. We're talking not only about people movers, but buses and other urban and suburban vehicles that are all running off of a clean fuel. And getting people into those mass transit vehicles is really the winning part of this equation.
With this futuristic idea, you can share your vehicle and still travel alone. The stackable car is like a supermarket cart with the e-jeepney's renewable power. You pick it up at A, drive it to B, then stick it back in the stack. If green shared transport replaces all car journeys, the carbon saved would rocket to 80%.
If that's the case, then mass transit really does provide sort of the triple win. Gets us out of our vehicles, reduces pollution, and frees up our roadways.
So far, Cannon has been keeping his eyes firmly on the road. But there's one more groundbreaking technology to consider. And this one comes from above.
Air travel is our big lurking problem out there. It's the one that's growing the fastest, and as we become more affluent, we're doing more and more of it.
In Ecopolis, hundreds of supersized jets land every single day. The noise is deafening. This is the shattering scream of atmospheric destruction. But this woman is the bringer of peace. Her plan? To turn the roar of aircraft to a whisper, and take an axe to aviation's carbon footprint into the bargain. Ann Dowling heads up the Silent Aircraft Initiative, a joint project from Cambridge University and MIT. Some of the biggest companies in aviation helped fund her team to solve a problem that threatened future airport expansion in cities. The deafening roar of jets.
We all want to fly, but no one wants an airport in their neighborhood, and that's because of the noise.
Dowling knew that cracking the noise problem could also cut aviation's carbon footprint, because airplane noise is the sound of wasted fuel and unnecessary emissions. Here's why. Amazing as it may seem, a plane's engines are not the biggest eardrum busters.
People associate aircraft noise as coming from the engines, but on approach, half the sound that we hear actually comes from the airframe.
The real trouble is the noisy, inefficient shape. Since the first commercial jetliner, the de Havilland Comet in 1949, the basic design has hardly changed. A tube-like fuselage containing the passengers with two swept-back wings. But the airflow around the tail fin, the wingtips, and the undercarriage creates drag, resisting forward motion. The noisy airflow keeps passengers awake, and it means the engines have to work harder, wasting thousands of gallons of fuel. Dowling knew that conquering drag would be the key to cutting decibels and improving fuel efficiency.
We set a very radical, not just a next generation noise target, but a really radical one, which in essence is that the sound energy would be less than 1% of the energy of current aircraft.
Cambridge University dates back 700 years before the Wright brothers. But this is where Dowling and her team are reinventing aviation's future. Testing in the wind tunnel with scale models is crucial. In fast-flowing air, even cables and hoses in the plane's undercarriage create high-frequency sound. If you live on the airport flight path, this noise can be unbearable. But muffling a single component is not enough. Because our ears get more sensitive as noise drops off, a silent aircraft is much harder to achieve. Here's the proof. 10 hairdryers at once create a real racket. Switch 5 off and the noise drops by half. But our ears instantly adjust, so the noise level sounds the same. 9 out of 10 dryers have to stop before we hear any real difference. In the quest for silence and reduced emissions, the team turns to a radical solution. Out goes the noisy old tube and wings. In comes a futuristic design born in the Cold War. A top-secret aircraft designed for silent strikes in the heart of enemy territory. The B-2 stealth bomber. To nix all noise, it's nothing more than a highly streamlined flying wing. Air flows smoothly over the entire surface. To cut drag, there's no tail fin or control flaps on the wings. Only advanced fly-by-wire electronics keep the stealth bomber stable. And this $2 billion killing machine could be the key to cutting aviation emissions in 2050.
Such designs do have the ability to be very fuel efficient and low on fuel burn.
But the streamlined stealth bomber isn't the ideal blueprint for an airliner. For starters, there's no space for passengers. And the roller coaster ride delivers G-forces that only a highly trained bomber pilot can survive. The design was too radical. Then, Dowling and her team learned of experimental work at NASA, the groundbreaking X-48B military transport plane. It's called a blended wing. The upturned wings give a more stable ride, and the wings blend smoothly into a wide body to allow space for cargo. The team still had a mountain to climb to merge the conventional passenger plane with the blended wing concept. For 3 years, they smoothed and honed every last feature of their airplane. The noisy 50-year-old tube and wings design remodeled as a blended wing for the streamlined, fuel-efficient future. Traditional tail fin and wing flaps are gone. The drag-busting design embeds the engines in the wings and smooths the airflow around the undercarriage. The passenger section, blended into the wings, helps to create lift. The result? A glimpse of tomorrow's aviation. The SAX-40, with room for 215 passengers. In 2050, we could all be flying in airplanes like this. In computer simulations, the sleek blended wing design is ultra-quiet. just 63 decibels of noise at the airport perimeter.
That's about the noise level in a typical office.
It's an unbelievable 300 times quieter than a 747. The blended wing is no faster than a 747, but its fuel efficiency savings are remarkable.
Blended wing body type designs could reduce fuel burn by more than 20% compared with current aircraft.
A 747 burns a gallon of gas per second, 100 passenger miles per gallon. Dowling's calculations predict a fully loaded SAX-40 could do an incredible 149 passenger miles per gallon. That's not just an improvement on the old tube and wings airliner. Per passenger mile, it's as good as a modern hybrid car carrying 2 people. The SAX-40 stats shocked one of the project's key backers.
When we came up with that figure, Boeing didn't quite believe it, and so they redid the calculations using their own in-house code and confirmed our results.
A fleet of futuristic SAX-40 planes could be in production inside 7 years. The new design could slash aviation's carbon footprint and let the citizens of Ecopolis sleep soundly in their beds. Dan Kamen has to judge whether the SAX-40 can make its way to a clean transport system for Ecopolis. But if the blended wing has a radical shape, it still has the same old jet fuel in the engines. One reason why the overall carbon saving is just 7%.
The blended wing is a very nice technology. It makes airplanes more efficient, it may make them somewhat quieter, but the problem is that the better you make airplanes using conventional fuel, the more we're going to fly.
The growth in total air traffic cancels out the reductions in carbon.
We need to find alternate means to power them. In that case, the blended wing plus a green fuel, that's a nice combination.
One possible solution, an airliner twice as big as the A380, the biggest airliner in the skies today. The A2 Lapcat hypersonic jet, planned for the year 2030, fueled by liquid hydrogen. There are no windows, because at 5 times the speed of sound, they would melt. The A2 could fly from London to Sydney in a quarter of the time it takes today. The trouble is, it would dump nitrous oxide, a potent greenhouse gas, straight into the ozone layer. But the designers are working hard to eliminate this pollution. If they succeed, then the blended wing might one day fly with a hydrogen engine. But the time for speculation is over. The scores are in, and Dan Kamen must make his decision. Which cutting-edge technology will he choose to install in Ecopolis, megacity of the future? Dan Kamen, Nobel Prize winner and top government energy advisor, is investigating 4 carbon-busting technologies to help us survive the future. By the year 2050, the cars and airplanes of our virtual megacity, Ecopolis, will pump out more than 4 times as much carbon as today. Its citizens are oil junkies, addicted to the combustion engine. The city, a gridlocked, polluted nightmare. So Kamen has a choice of 4 groundbreaking transport technologies. He must choose just one with the best chance of cleaning up our cities before it's too late.
We're going to have to develop new technologies that really do cut into the carbon budget, they're cost effective, and that we can get people to use them. Only by doing all 3 can we really make a dent on our transport problem.
In New York State, Daniel O'Connell is developing the fuel cell car. It needs no gas because it has no engine. Instead, hydrogen fuel is used to make electric power. The carbon saving if every engine in Ecopolis were replaced, 80%. But for Kamen, this is new wine in an old bottle.
Hydrogen can be a very clean fuel supply. The problem is that we got to get ourselves out of millions and millions of new cars to be built for the world of the future.
In the UK, Anne Dowling's streamlined, fuel-efficient blended wing makes only 1% of the noise of a conventional airliner. But for Kamen, the 7% carbon saving doesn't tackle the real problem. It won't stop the massive increase in air travel, powered by highly polluting jet fuel.
It's very efficient, it makes air travel better, but with fixing this is just like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. It's not enough.
It's time to be ruthless. Fuel cells and blended wings are cleaner than the technologies we have now. But Kamen must cut down his choices.
I'm going to remove two of them for consideration. Fuel cell cars and the blended wing aircraft. Nice technologies, have real application, but they're not going to bring us all the way to a clean energy future.
That leaves two technologies going head to head. The electric jeepney and algae biofuel. Athena Ballesteros has worked a makeover on the oily icon of the Philippines, the diesel-powered jeepney. Now it's the gleaming biogas-powered electric jeepney. The bad news? The carbon saving is just 4%. The good news? That figure rockets to 80% if everyone in Nicopolis makes the switch to mass transit.
To make e-jeepneys in mass transit, the main means and get it a very high carbon score, we're going to have to change the mindset, get people out of their cars and thinking that mass transit is the way to get around.
If Glenn Kurtz succeeds in Texas, oil will never run out. He thinks fast-growing algae can fill up every fuel tank in Nicopolis, from the street to the sky. And by the power of photosynthesis, it would swallow the carbon footprint completely.
Algae biofuels can be raised in tanks. You can use the waste gas from power plants. That's a very attractive, sustainable equation. I'm still a little bit concerned about the fact that in the end, we're going to burn this fuel in our vehicles, and that results in some other pollutants beyond greenhouse gases. We've got to think about this one.
But thinking time is over. Kamen must choose a single transport technology to turn Nicopolis from urban nightmare to model megacity. Electric jeepney or algae biofuel?
This is going to be a very hard choice, and no matter what happens in the end, both of these technologies have a role to play in a low-carbon future. We're addicted to our cars, we like to drive here and there, and if we can get that changed, e-jeepneys and mass transit can be a real player. They can be a real contender for our clean energy future. Biofuels from algae are very attractive. This is a way to dramatically reduce the carbon footprint. I think this is a very exciting technology.
The bottom line for Kamen, which technology will really change the world?
E-jeepney is the one that I'm going to pick in the end, and it may be a surprise.